The role of a loyalty program is to make customers loyal to the brand, not to the program. Customers become very promiscuous in nature. They become actually disloyal because there's so many offers out in the marketplace. That's the currency of peace of mind and convenience and time savings. Those are things that I value beyond discount. The way you differentiate yourself is by creating an emotional connection with customers.
Welcome back to the Built by Me podcast. Today we're chatting with Richard Schenker, the mastermind behind PC Optimum and a leading expert in customer engagement. With decades of experience designing and managing top loyalty programs, Richard knows what keeps customers coming back.
Today we're diving into the power of nostalgia, storytelling, emotional connections, plus how AI and gamification are shaping the future of loyalty. If you want to understand what truly drives customer loyalty, this episode is a must listen. Let's get right into it.
Welcome back to the Built by Me podcast. I'm Taina.
And I'm Mo.
And today we're joined by Richard, who will introduce himself.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Schenker. I am the Chief Customer Engagement Officer for Loyal Strategy Consulting. I help organizations build transactional and emotional loyalty to their brand by designing loyalty solutions for them and redesigning solutions that need help.
So Richard, I want to start with what got you into customer engagement in the first place? Like, how did you get to this?
That's a very interesting story. So I graduated from the University of Ottawa with my MBA, and I was actually recruited on campus by the Hudson's Bay Company, of all companies, in the news these days.
Yes.
And
we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it, absolutely. Yeah, it's got a sort of a sentimental place in my heart. I actually worked for the Hudson's Bay Company for 9 years in a number of different capacities, but when I joined the organization, effectively you're a management trainee and you spend a lot of time in the stores doing things that you probably wouldn't want to do, but it was probably the best experience to be in the stores because that's where the business is actually at. There are no cash registers at head office. All the registers are actually in the store. To make a long story short, as part of my rotation, I was in the credit and financial services department, and I spent some time doing data analytics. Back in the day, it was pretty primitive, I have to say. But then there was an opportunity for a role around the credit marketing role for the Simpsons card. Now I'm really dating myself. And I applied for the role and I got the job. And you know what happened to Simpsons. So I ended up taking over the role for National Credit Marketing Manager for the Bay. And I was actually asked by, at the time, the president, Bob Peter, to build a loyalty program for the Bay. So it was actually the first loyalty program for the Bay.
Interesting.
I spent about 6 to 8 months building the program, and the program was Bay Card Dollars program. It was a very successful program that was tied to the credit card, and it drove a lot of revenue and a lot of brand avidity towards HBC. So that was really my start into loyalty.
This is wow.
Kind of backed into it in a surprising way.
Yeah, I feel like we're sitting with a legend. Built so many great loyalty programs. I do want to chat about your time at the Bay because obviously it's been in the news a lot. For anyone who doesn't know, Hudson's Bay is currently liquidating. What do you think went wrong?
Well, how much time do you have?
In a short end.
I'll try to be as decisive as possible. I think a number of things have gone wrong. So first of all, I think the brand itself did not innovate. They tried to innovate. I think they had some shackles. I think the private equity ownership created some challenges. This was more of a real estate play than a retail play. They brought in, some really, strong strategic people like Bonnie Brooks and others. For a while we thought the Bay was going to go down the right path, but also the demographics have changed. That younger demographic is not really shopping at the Bay. They shop online. Their shopping experience is very different, and I don't think that as much as the Bay tried to, they didn't really adapt their value proposition enough. And it's a sad commentary on where retail is going in this country.
Because we were talking about that earlier, like the whole department store shopping it's still existent, but it's also like becoming more and more challenging. Like in the 90s, it was like the best thing ever. One-stop
right.
shop, you get everything. You know what I mean? You want
I
one
was
spot.
actually there for the heyday.
Yeah.
The days of scratch and save,
Yeah.
and the Bay was just flying during those days. They saw Eaton's fold because of the Bay.
That's right. Yeah.
Nobody could keep up with the Bay, but it's sad to see such an incredible, rich institution in this country, and it goes beyond just being a merchant. There's a lot of history around this country and the Hudson's Bay. Hopefully, somebody will find a way to keep elements of the Bay,
Yeah.
even the stripes. I know there's discussions about retaining that and selling the
Really?
rights.
Yeah. That's actually really
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
At the time, so when you built that loyalty program, like, what was the loyalty landscape? What did the loyalty landscape look like back then?
Very different than now. It was
Yeah.
not nearly as saturated. I think the predominant loyalty programs in the country were Canadian Tire Money, and it
Yeah.
wasn't even an electronic. I think most Canadians had a stack of Canadian Tire Money in their
Yes.
glove box,
My mom
myself
still
included.
does. Yeah.
There you go. And of course, Club Z.
Yeah.
So Club Z was a very successful program. I think came to fruition in 1985, and because Hudson's Bay owned Zellers and the Bay and Simpsons at the time, the president of the Bay wanted a loyalty program because, to a certain extent, the two brands actually did compete across,
Yes.
a number of different categories. So that was really sort of the catalyst. I would say the market was a lot less mature, a lot less saturated.
Yeah.
Customers were not as loyalty savvy. So it was a very, very different time. I don't even think Air Miles was in play then. So it was an interesting time to launch loyalty. There were less expectations, I would say, around procuring a program and delivering a program in the marketplace.
Yeah. On that note, do you think it's easier to get customer buy-in now, or was it easier before because there were no expectations? So it's like giving them like a point system or like an easy loyalty program would still do really well versus now we have so many options and expectations. Having a good loyalty program is harder.
I think it's much more difficult now.
Yeah.
We have an oversaturation of loyalty programs in the marketplace. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but the average Canadian is part of, I think it's 15 or 16 different loyalty programs, whether they're in wallet or an app.
Yeah.
So there's a fragmentation of attention. I think there's a lot of similarity in loyalty programs. Just coming out of conference now, talking about the fact that too many programs are too focused on discounting and not enough on building emotional connections with customers to really differentiate themselves. So it is much more different now. I think customers are much more, while they're in a lot of loyalty programs, I think they're more discerning in terms of which ones they want to participate in and really show loyalty to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely something you're seeing a lot more of these days. But there's still some brands I think that are standing out, like with all the noise, right? Like, you were obviously, the person that built Shoppers Optimum, which is like a very
Insane.
Yeah, it's a very iconic Canadian loyalty program. Why do you think it became so iconic and so big?
Yeah, I think when you think about the Shoppers Optimum program, which is now PC Optimum, at the time, Shoppers was at a very different stage in their sort of life cycle as a brand. They didn't have these, 15 to 20,000 square foot stores. There were more like 7,000 to 8,000 square feet in strip malls. And Shoppers actually had paper-based loyalty programs. They had a cosmetics club program. They had a baby club. They also had a seniors club. And actually the back of the store had Health Watch, which is not a formal loyalty program, but it's a reason to create a connection with that dispensary or that pharmacist. And at the time, we had all these disparate programs, and we had to bring this together under one umbrella. So I think customers really saw the appeal of having one program for shopping at the store.
Right.
And effectively what we did with the program was we made this program real time. There weren't a lot of real-time programs out in the marketplace. Even Air Miles, you'd have to wait, for 48 hours or a week, depending on which partner gave you the points. You got your points immediately. And the big success with Optimum was when it was launched, you can make one transaction and you'd be already at your redemption level. Back in the day, the redemption level was really low. So we had customers cycling through the store picked up the card at the front of the store, made a transaction, and were already at their first redemption level. And it was just so simple. It was intuitive. We actually overshot all the targets that we set for the program. We expected to have 4 million customers in the program after 1 year. We got that after 1 month.
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible.
And to your point around why was it so successful, it had a lot to do with the operational implementation. There was a tremendous amount of buy-in right from the late CEO, David Bloom, right down to that cashier at the store level. Everyone was being evaluated and compensated based on the success of the program. So it was a corporate mandate whereby when the program was launched, everything was taken off the table at the store. This was the sole focus of the store, to enroll customers, engage customers in the program, and drive sales. And it drove sales, not just in the first year or the second year, but in perpetuity. And today it lives on as a very strong program in the form of PC Optimum. So, ultimately we delivered something that the customer was looking for, something that was instant, immediate gratification, because Shoppers is not the lowest price retailer out in the marketplace. They're what you call sort of a high-low retailer. When they run a sale, they have a great sale. But when they're not on sale, they are a higher price and you pay for convenience. Optimum would really, help offset that higher price.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the brands that, generationally has stuck around for a while, right? And has continuously innovated, till this day. And I'm speaking I know from my own personal experience. My mother is just obviously a diehard Shoppers fan, and she'll this day, I have a seniors discount now. If you want me to buy anything on Thursdays, just let me know. I'll buy it for you. I get more points. I'm like, just relax, Mom.
Don't tell too many people.
Exactly. So what's interesting is that it's lived on. It's very rare you see loyalty programs that continue to live on for that long, right? So it's definitely implemented.
We're actually Shoppers Optimum, or PC Optimum, is coming up to its 25th anniversary on September 10th, 2025.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And I'll actually be issuing, let's call it a little bit of a throwback history story about Optimum. So I'm working with DM to pull that together. So it should be pretty interesting.
That's really cool.
Well, definitely look out for that. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
Why do you think the buy-in from the top level down was so important to Shoppers or to Optimum?
Well, I'll tell you how we got the buy-in. And the way we got the buy-in was that prior to developing the program, we took the executive group across the pond to meet with Boots in the UK, which was miles ahead of Shoppers in terms of building loyalty. They had their Advantage program, and also Tesco, who were leaders in loyalty. And at the time, Shoppers was really a company that, pile it as high as you can and price it right, and, we'll sell the merchandise. They were very category management driven. They were not necessarily customer centric driven. Not to say they weren't good retailers and cared about customers, but we had to demonstrate to the executive group that there's a different way of doing business. We should be building solutions and programs around what your customers are looking for, not what your merchants are trying to sell. And we were able to really get that across by taking them to see how Tesco was successful with their loyalty program, how Boots was successful with the loyalty program. When they came back, they were evangelical about loyalty. Our team really didn't even have to do much to encourage them. It got passed through the board and we were off to the races.
What do you think makes people so loyalty to a brand then when they have that loyalty program in place? From the customer side of things, what do you think makes us loyal to brands?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always say that the role of a loyalty program is to make customers loyal to the brand, not to the program. I feel that loyalty has to do heavy lifting to get people loyal to the brand. And, there's a proliferation of loyalty programs in the marketplace that are discount-based, and discounts do good work. There's a transactional side to a loyalty program, but I think really good loyalty programs build emotional connectivity and purpose with the brand proper. And there's some really great examples of programs out there like Sephora, the Beauty Insider program. I was just talking about this at the conference where they have a community where they bring like-minded people together to immerse in the brand. You know, whether it's sharing tips, tricks, beauty regimens, meeting up with peers, getting advice from beauty advisors, doing virtual try-ons. They're providing much more than a discount. They're providing knowledge. They're providing confidence. It's those programs that build strong avidity to the brand, and it's those programs that customers actually gravitate to.
Why do you think though? Like there's some brands that we stick around with, even though, you know what I mean? They don't really do the job for us. You know what I mean? It's like they frustrate you. But you have no choice. Why do you think people, like consumers in general, stick around with those brands?
I think as Canadians, we're pretty forgiving, perhaps too forgiving, sometimes too polite, although that seems to be changing a little bit. But I think, you know, we don't have as many choices in categories. Like if you go down into the US, you've got a plethora of choices. You know, look at grocery, like so many options, whereas here there are, you know, 3-4 main grocery chains. There's also habit.
Yeah.
It's harder to switch. You know, you think about financial institutions, the hassle to change your bank accounts and your credit cards, you know, just sort of grants a little bit more forgiveness.
It's like your cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. Telco providers, exactly. Don't let's not even talk about that. You know, but I think we are forgiving to a certain point.
Yeah. That's true. I know we don't want to talk about telco, but yeah, it's unless they really like. I mean, but sometimes they really do. But yeah.
But that's an example where we don't have enough competitive choice in the marketplace, so there isn't as much of a raison d'etre for brands to elevate their game.
That's fair. No, that's totally fair.
Is there a brand that you personally admire for like their customer engagement and their strategy?
I would say Nordstrom's would be a great example, and I know they left Canada, but if you had the opportunity to shop at Nordstrom's while they were here, and certainly in the U.S., they are all about service orientation. You know, even inside of their loyalty program, the Nordy program, you have ways of connecting with, you know, a stylist to help you with your fashion needs. They really speak to the core of their business. They walk the talk, and they deliver on what their brand purpose is. And I would say that's a great example. So, you know, you can get a stylist who you can email and ask questions. You can actually go into the store for an in-store consultation. You can even have a stylist come to your house and do a wardrobe audit. That may be a little intimidating.
That sounds like some people go through your closet?
Some people may want that. Some people may need that. But what they're doing is they're building a connection that transcends the transactional relationship. That stylist who's coming to your house or is in the store, you're creating an emotional bond with them. And it doesn't end there, because afterwards you spend time with that person, you know, deciding on, you know, the next event that I need, you know, that special gown for, or that special suit for. So you're building a long-term connection. And I think that is an example of a brand that really has an elevated sort of customer experience.
What about mistakes? Like I know like there's a lot of brands that make mistakes, but what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to building like a loyalty program?
I would say one of the biggest mistakes around building a loyalty program is building it based on the business needs without a view to what your customer needs are. And, you know, case in example, I have a lot of admiration for frequent flyer programs. I've worked with both of the airline carriers in Canada and, you know, other airline carriers. But I think the airline industry has made these programs too complicated. And they're complicated because they're designed to really benefit the business, in some cases more than the customers. You know, we just saw WestJet go through a transformation that they announced as part of the redesign of the program. I was fortunate enough to do some consulting work with WestJet. And what they've done is they've tried to simplify the experience. They've tried to expand the experience. But I would say by and large, that sector is still a very complicated structure. You know, at the end of the day, they're trying to mitigate liability. But customers have to jump through hoops to really understand the program, engage in the program, and get something tangible. You know, the average person that doesn't travel much with an airline really won't extract a lot of value out of the program.
It's the one with like the different tiers of like like tier 1, tier 2, or silver or something. I've tried to read it so many times to figure out what my benefits are because I have the credit card, and I was just like, what is my benefit from this? For like,
Yeah, and there's status miles, there's different segregations. It's very complex. Now, if you're an elite traveler, you understand the game because you're working to it and you experience all those benefits.
Yeah.
I've always found that was like a big gap in the airline industry world is like, how do you create a program that will actually encourage people to travel more often? Do you know what I mean? Like reward me to encourage me to travel, where it's like, help me close the gap, help me, like, you know what I mean? Because it could be a win-win, but you're right. A lot of times they look at it from a business perspective. You travel this much, you're going to get rewarded. If you don't travel,
that's right,
ever often, you're missing out.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, I would say to the airlines, they have expanded their programs through partnerships to give everyday benefits. So if you're not a heavy traveler, you can start to accumulate equity by shopping at different places.
Yes.
We're seeing more and more of that. Certainly Air Canada has expanded that substantially.
Absolutely.
WestJet is in the process of expanding that as well. So they do understand that they need to appeal to all segments.
Yeah, I always honestly I got the credit card at first because of the companion vouchers,
right?
Because they had that, and that was an incentive for me because I was like, okay, if you're traveling, then you can. Before it was like you get yours, and then the second one is like $99, I think.
That's right.
And then it went to $199. I think it's now at $299. So economics. It's just the economy has made it go up. But I also really like just the free luggage. I think that was like a really big thing for me because you pay for the credit card. But for me, I'm like with the companion voucher, and even if I don't use it, if I travel twice, if I take 2 flights that year, it paid for this credit card in itself because I can just free luggage. That's like $50 each way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, there's a convenience. So through my credit card, I get status.
Yeah.
And I love the status because I'm always anxious when I go to the airport. It's like I have to be there 3 hours ahead of time. And it's such a stressful thing in our family, and primarily because of me. But once I got this card, I only have to be there an hour and a half. I know that I'll have priority check-in. I know that I'll get priority through security. And I know that that carry-on bag is going to actually be above where I sit, and it's not going to be sort of down below.
Somewhere else.
And when my luggage comes off, it's going to be priority. So to me, that's the currency of peace of mind and convenience and time savings. Those are things that I value beyond discounting, as an example.
See, and that's the thing with like different customer loyalty programs. It's not always a discount, or it's not always like cashback or points. It's the whole experience. We've talked about this earlier today as well. Just like, how can you make the customer's life more convenient, or what are some problems that the customer is facing that you can solve for them?
Exactly.
And that's something that I'm willing to pay for. As a customer, we're willing to pay for convenience. We're willing to pay for things to be a little bit quicker, easier, cheaper. But I'd prefer quicker and easier and it's the same price than if it's just cheaper, but it's harder.
Yeah, I think good loyalty programs are figuring out how to monetize certain currencies.
Yeah.
So the currency of, peace of mind, time saving, convenience, even trust. Even Uber, I don't know if they still have this, but they've got a button you can press if you don't want to speak to a yappy driver. That driver won't speak to you if you want to go into quiet mode. So not sure where that button is, but somebody did tell me about that. So that in itself, for some people, that's probably pretty valuable.
Yeah. Requesting a silent ride.
That's right.
Sure.
But it's becoming like a thing now, where it's like your programs that you implement, like your loyalty programs, will help customers stay engaged with the brand for a long period of time, not a short period of time, right? So how do you think brands can do that over, like, you know what I mean? And how can they build programs to help ensure customers stick around for a while? Because we talked about like the Optimum
longevity.
program, and they nailed it, right? Like they got it. It's generational now. It's like your parents had it, you have it now, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's like what do you think is the secret sauce?
Yeah, but I would even say about Optimum, PC Optimum is certainly doing this. Programs need to evolve.
Yeah.
They can't just stay where they are. Times are changing, demographics are changing, socioeconomic changes. This world is fluid. Everything is changing. Competition is changing.
Yeah.
You have to keep on innovating. It's absolutely critically important. And I fervently believe that by bringing elements of emotional loyalty into the program that sort of accentuate and speak to the purpose of the brand, and provide benefits, and perks, both in a published and unpublished manner, is a way that you will build stickiness to the brand
Right.
and allow the program to succeed over time. But you can't sort of sit back on your laurels. Programs need to innovate, they need to change, they need to be very good listeners to understand sort of customer sentiment, like anything else. You know, we saw tragically what's happened to the Hudson's Bay Company. They didn't move with the times. And, you know, a company that's, 354 years old, it's tragic to see this company go away. But unfortunately, the priorities of the company were different, or at least the ownership, I should say, were different.
Yeah.
How can you tell the difference between a customer that's actually loyal to a brand and will stick around for a while, or someone who just wants the rewards? Or is there's no point in distinguishing the difference, because either way, they're shopping?
Yeah, I would say there's always going to be customers who are sort of what I call discount seekers. They are going to join the program, they're going to stay loyal to the program because of the discount. I'm not sure they're loyal to the brand. I would say they're loyal to the discount, not the brand.
Sure.
So if someone else gives them a discount, their heads can be turned immediately.
Exactly. Like, I think customers have become very promiscuous in nature. They become actually disloyal because there's so many offers out in the marketplace. And we actually saw this in the credit card industry with Aeroplan, where you had customers jumping from TD to CIBC to Amex, and Aeroplan actually had to shut that down because they had customers just jumping based on the offers. So that itself is problematic, and that's why I say we have to find ways beyond the discount to get people loyal.
Yeah.
You know, granted, people are always going to be seeking, and especially in these difficult economic times, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. People are looking for ways to save, and we saw that certainly in the pandemic. Like, when you take a look at the way reward redemption changed, it was all, you know, grocery and gas and pharmacy. Like, the pendulum completely shifted to discounting, and rightfully so.
You know, we were talking about this right before you actually came in, and we were talking about like how now it seems like customers are, it's like your window to impress a customer is getting smaller and smaller.
It is.
Right. And it's harder to impress customers and for them to stick, like, or for brands to impress customers. We were kind of talking about this from the lens of like technology. It's like, you know, ChatGPT will come out and then everyone's just like, Siri sucks. Even though Siri was like the best thing in the world when it happened. Right. So it's like, when you look at it in terms of like, is it because consumers in general, or people in general, as a society in general, because technology has played such a big impact on us, is that we now have brands are having a harder time to impress customers to stick around?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think what's happening is there's this convergence of a number of different factors. One being, I think customers have shorter attention spans. Customers are not as loyal as they used to be. I think social media has changed everything. Everyone has an opinion about everything. And I think that technology has played such a significant role in terms of getting people to question whether this is the right program for them, because we've been able to enable a lot of features through technology. And if a brand is not keeping current with technology through their loyalty program, they're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's just so many different factors here that are creating it much more difficult for loyalty operators to keep that attention span of the customer. It's like anything else beyond loyalty. You know, you take any type of brand, there's innovations happening all the time.
Yeah. Are there any brands like in your mind that stick out that are doing a good job keeping up with that?
I think companies like Amazon do a really good job. You know, they are effectively a technology company. They are in the currency of convenience and time saving. And they do a really good job at providing a better branded experience for their customers. So that's an example of, you know, the Prime program, which is one of the largest loyalty programs in the marketplace. That doesn't try to be everything to everyone. It knows exactly what it needs to deliver, excuse the pun. It knows exactly what features they're going to provide to the customer, because that's why the customer is going to Amazon. So that would be an example of one program that really does a very good job.
Can you explain gamification loyalty programs, and do you think they're here to stay?
I think they are here to stay. We do have to be careful about gamification, because gamification is not for everyone. I've also seen some studies that suggest that gamification doesn't actually drive the needle.
Interesting.
There are some programs out there that use gamification as a way to nudge the customer along the way to purchase. I think when used intelligently, gamification absolutely does have a role. I think with the inception of AI into gamification, we are going to see a very different level of gamification happening. So gamification for you versus me versus you may be very different in terms of the value propositions that we get, because we're going to have the smarts to be able to customize that level of gamification. I think prior to AI, gamification was done on more of a mass basis.
Right.
I would say there's probably some segmentation that was done, but we're going to be able to build gamification right down to the individual to understand what your needs are, what your aspirations are. The things that motivate you may be very different than the things that motivate me.
Right.
So getting down to that level of specificity through AI will actually help to turbocharge gamification.
I have a question, and then we're kind of closing up here, but for the people that are listening to the podcast and are wondering and saying, you know what, we're hearing a lot about these big brands like the PC Optimums, the Amazon Primes of the world, but I don't have that budget. I'm not that big of an organization, but I wanna build customer loyalty. What do you sort of what do you sort of recommend, or what's the best way for like smaller businesses to build customer loyalty?
That's a really good question, and I often get that question at dinner parties when I'm speaking to friends who know what I do for a living. And first of all, they say, well, I can't afford you as a consultant to start with. I say, I'll give you the friends and family discount. But that is a factual reality. There is a lot of cost in setting up a loyalty program, from the technology, the resources that you require, the financial liability. Now, there are companies out there that have sort of packaged loyalty programs. You see that in your local coffee shop or, a local restaurant, that sort of thing. But I think at the end of the day, what really engenders loyalty is building a better branded experience for your customers. My wife and I go to a coffee shop that's around the corner from us, and we have a Starbucks right next door to us. And we pass by the Starbucks every time to go to this coffee shop, because when we go in there, they know us. They greet us. We talk to them. They're part of the community.
Right.
They actually do have a loyalty program. I would say it's a pretty primitive loyalty program. Sometimes I give them some free tips on what they should be doing, but I'm not there because of the loyalty program. I'm there because of the experience.
Yeah.
They make my coffee a certain way. When I come in, they know exactly what I want. I don't even need to tell them. It goes back to that human connection. And I would say to those organizations that are smaller companies, go back to the roots of retailing. Go back to creating those connections with your customers, and that will take you a long way. And not to say you can't have something that is maybe, automated, that's sort of low tech, that will serve a purpose to drive some level of transactional loyalty. But I really believe that the way you differentiate yourself is by creating an emotional connection with customers.
That in-person customer experience, or
Absolutely.
the things that you can naturally do.
That's right.
For
That won't
your
cost
business.
you anything.
Exactly, for free.
Right.
Training properly, so that people make sure that they are, remembering your name, or just writing your name on maybe their coffee cup, and you don't even have to say it every time. They just already know which is coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got my seat in the corner. They already know.
Someone's sitting in there like, get up.
They don't do that, but if I call up, they'll say, okay, do you want me to reserve the seat? I say, yeah, I'm going to be
that's so
there.
cute.
And, it's a small little sort of boutique-y coffee shop. So it just feels right.
I love it because as small as it does seem, like, you know what I mean, in terms of like a solution, but it's really getting to know your customers. Like,
Exactly.
right? And it's as your businesses or businesses build up, then you can kind of grow with that loyalty program, because you kind of know what your customers want.
And I can tell you, I actually spend more money there than I would spend on coffees and, pastries or whatever, because I just love the ambiance and the experience and the way they make you feel when you're there.
That's awesome.
So like the customer loyalty program isn't just the data that you're giving or anything like that. It's the whole customer experience from when they walk through the door. And that's just like how you're building that loyalty.
Exactly. And I would say they already have an informal loyalty program. You know, forget about the program they have at the register. It's the way they interact with the customer. They've got a lot of the ingredients, you know, building confidence and trust and knowing me. These are all important things that customers really value.
100%.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation, Richard. You have such a wealth of knowledge on customer engagement, customer loyalty. Obviously, you've worked with a lot of big brands, so you have a lot of experience in a variety of industries. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here, and hopefully we can chat again about a similar topic or a different topic.
I love it.
Of course.
Thanks a lot, Richard.
Before we go, we always ask our guests, where can people find you?
Sure. I can be found on LinkedIn. I can also be found at R. Schenker at loyalstrategyconsulting.com. And if you're interested in visiting my website at loyalstrategyconsulting.com, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, you'll get more tips and tricks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Richard.
Thank you.
And that wraps up today's episode of The Build.
As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a rating. Until next time.
Keep building.